Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Layo Olande. It's the last episode for the week. Thank you for joining us. Let's begin in Gabon, where ousted President Ali Bongo, who was deposed in a 2023 coup, has left the country and is now in Angola. Angolan authorities announced that Bongo's family had been released from detention and were with President João Lourenço in Luanda. Former President Bongo's wife and son, Sylvia and Nureddin, faced corruption charges and had been imprisoned in 2023. Mrs. Bongo's lawyer has described her detention as arbitrary and illegal. The family's release comes after Angolan President Lourenço, who currently heads the African Union, visited Libreville and held talks with his Gabonese counterpart, Brice Oligui Nguema, the former general who led the coup against Bongo before winning a landslide victory in last month's presidential elections. In Ethiopia, the main opposition party has condemned a ban on its activities, saying it posed a serious threat to the 2022 peace deal that ended 2 years of conflict in the northern Tigray region. The Tigray People's Liberation Front, TPLF, has called for the African Union to mediate with the federal government after the electoral agency revoked its legal status as a party. The party, which governs Tigray and dominated the entire country for many years, was on Wednesday banned for failing to hold a general assembly. The decision follows months of political tensions in Tigray and comes ahead of nationwide elections that are due to take place by June next year at the latest. The party led a coalition that overthrew the government back in 1991 and ruled Ethiopia until 2018 when Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed took power. He then dissolved that coalition and formed a new party which was rejected by the TPLF. Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Karim Ahmad Khan, is calling on Libyan authorities to hand over the head of Libya's judicial police, Osama al-Masri Najim, for transfer to the International Court so he can stand trial for war crimes. Speaking to the UN Security Council, Mr. Khan said a moment of hope turned to frustration after Italy, who had arrested Najim, released him in January to the Libyan government. Najim had been arrested on an International Criminal Court warrant over allegations of war crimes and crimes against humanity. Osama Najim, also known as al-Masri, is also the director of an infamous detention center in Mitiga, near Tripoli, Libya, which Amnesty International says is the scene of horrific violations committed with total impunity.
The reasons.
It was a moment of real significance, a moment of hope, a moment of promise, when Mr. Osama al-Masri Najim was arrested by the Italian authorities on the 20th of January this year, based on an arrest warrant issued by Pretrial Chamber 1 of the International Criminal Court at the request of my office. For the first time, we saw the potential for some sunlight to reach those sites, for some truth to emerge, to show the world what is happening, and to give hope to the victims of crimes that we say are being committed. Mr. President, Excellencies, that hope for so many soon turned to frustration in the days that after the arrest of Mr. Najim, when he was returned to Libya by Italy, returned back to the place where we say he'd been committing crimes against humanity and war crimes, including murder, torture, and persecution at Mitiga prison. From civil society and victims over the arrest of Mr. Najim and the publication of the arrest warrant in relation to him have sent what can only be described as shockwaves through the militias, through the community of alleged perpetrators throughout Libya. A rising awareness that the rule of law has entered the territory of Libya, and the allegations are being forensically looked at, are being analyzed, and that there are independent judges in The Hague that are doing their jobs. 6 months, but underpinning it all, and I encourage the Libyan authorities to now hand over Mr. Najim for transfer to the International Criminal Court, so he can stand trial for the crimes that have been subject to the warrant issued by the pretrial chamber. Crimes of the Libyan people.
Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu has been invited to the Vatican to attend a solemn mass marking the beginning of the pontificate of Pope Leo XIV, the 267th Bishop of Rome and the new leader of the Roman Catholic Church. A statement from the presidency says a papal invitation sent by Cardinal Pietro Parolin underscored the need for President Tinubu's physical presence at this moment of particular importance for the Catholic Church and the world affected by many tensions and conflicts. In his invitation, Pope Leo stressed, "Your great nation is particularly dear to me as I worked in the Apostolic Nunciature in Lagos during the 1980s. Joining the presidential delegation for Saturday, May 17, 2025, is the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Bianca Odumegu Ojukwu, Archbishop of Warri, and President of Catholic Bishops' Conference of Nigeria, Archbishop Lucius Ugoji, Archbishop Ignatius Kaigama of Abuja, and Alfred Martins of Lagos, as well as the Catholic Bishop of Sokoto Diocese, Matthew Hassan Kuka. The President is expected to return to the country on Tuesday, May 20, 2025. Over in South Africa, the Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, is urging white farmers, particularly Afrikaners, to remain in the country and work with the government to overcome challenges facing rural communities. His comments come in response to the departure of dozens of white South Africans who were resettled in the U.S. as refugees this week under a policy initiative driven by President Donald Trump. Speaking at the National Maize Producers Organization, NAMPO, South Africa's largest agricultural exhibition, Mr. Mashatile sought to reassure the farming community of the government's support. He emphasized that the government does not want Afrikaner farmers to leave the country, highlighting their essential role in agriculture and national development. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa is set to meet with U.S. President Donald Trump next week in an effort to address key areas of disagreement between the two countries, particularly around trade. While speaking on the sidelines of the 100 Most Reputable Africans event last night, Dr. Sindiswa Mzammo, president of the Circle of Global Business Women, expressed her support for the upcoming talks, emphasizing the importance of strengthening bilateral ties in ways that benefit both countries.
I'm really excited about the first meeting between President Trump and President Ramaphosa, because this meeting would actually set the bar high as we're actually preparing for the G20. In my other life, I actually serve as the co-chair of financial inclusion and entrepreneurship within G20, responsible for W20. So now as women, we want our country presidents to come together and build peace as we build the Africa that we want, but also building a better world, a better Africa, a better South Africa.
Still in South Africa, the 100 Most Reputable Africans were honored last night at an event held in Johannesburg. The celebrations highlighted the continent's excellence, innovation and resilience, recognizing individuals whose leadership, vision and service continue to shape Africa's future. The gathering brought together community leaders, government officials, and representatives from various sectors to acknowledge these trailblazers and their outstanding contributions. Our South Africa correspondent, Innocent Semosa, has more.
A celebration of Africa's very best. The 100 Most Reputable Africans, the list recognizes individuals who have made outstanding contributions across various sectors. In his keynote address, the Nigerian traditional ruler of the Kingdom of Warri in Delta State Ogiame Atuate III urged Africans to uphold integrity as a core value in leadership and everyday life.
Because as we are elevated to roles of influence, we must take it with all seriousness. Because positive role modeling is actually very contagious. And once you are able to set an example for all to see that these things are possible, it's going to catch and spread like wildfire.
Meanwhile, South Africa's former Deputy President, Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, highlighted the importance of serving others and giving back to the community.
And I think today in this room, I'm sitting with many leaders. And you probably feel it in your own work and the things that you do. Continuing to lead in that manner that brings others, sort of lifting as you clap, is probably the best way we can all serve.
Some of the dignitaries also shared their hopes for the Africa they envision, one driven by unity, innovation, and inclusive development.
For me, as we build the Africa that we want through the implementation of the AFCFTA, it's very important to actually acknowledge our skills as CEOs, to acknowledge our skills as company chairmen, to acknowledge our skills of who we are as Africans, because no one else can actually build that Africa that we want besides us as Africans. So this is very important for us to actually say the skills that we want in the continent must be acknowledged, and the only way to acknowledge that skill is to actually celebrate our Africans and award them, to say, we see you.
Amazing. I love that. I want to see an Africans where travel is not restricted, where when they see your passport, as long as you are from this continent, you are well treated at the border. I want to see an Africans where trade is encouraged. We live in a world that if you ask an African man, where do you want to spend your holidays? We choose to say, I want to go to London or US. I want to see an African where we say, I want to go and spend my summer in South Africa.
What an inspirational time it has been, motivational time it has been here. I can tell you now that this was a clear reminder about the greatness within the African continent. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Innocent Samos, Channels Television News.
100 most reputable Africans who were honored last night in Johannesburg. Joining us now is Miriam Buka Hassan, an internationally renowned poet and founder of True My Voice. Miriam was one of the awardees honored at last night's event. Thank you, Miriam, for speaking to us, and congratulations to you. I imagine you are ecstatic about this. What does the award mean to you, and how do you feel, about being recognized among this prestigious list of people?
Most reputable Africans is actually a reminder to me of the responsibility that I carry to continue using my art to inspire change, to amplify hope, and to actually change the narrative. And really just being amongst this list of really, really prestigious and impactful Africans. We're talking about people like Ogiame Olu of Wari Atwashi III. We're talking about people like our mother, Mama Phumzile, who is the former deputy, the former vice president of South Africa, who also led UN Women. I mean, it really touches the core of my being. And basically what this tells me is that poetry is powerful, that storytelling matters, that the work that we do, whether seen or unseen, really resonates far beyond us. So this award is for every young African that, has dared to dream loudly. Africa is coming. We're not stopping despite it all. Whether the world calls us late, whether policy forgets our names, we the undocumented miracles, we're still crafting possibilities out of what's left.
Well, I can tell, you take pride in your craft and its ability to impact the society. Well, tell us more about, the power of poetry in changing the world and how you see your work contributing to the broader conversations in Africa.
So poetry for me is actually not just art, it's architecture because it builds the bridges between, futures, between hearts, languages, and it has the power to actually distill complex truths into verses that actually linger, that challenge, that heal. And as a poet, I see my work as both a mirror and a compass and a reflection also of our realities and a guide towards possibility. See, in Africa, where stories are sacred, poetry is rebirth, it's remembrance, it's resistance. And one thing that I can say for sure is poetry alone cannot change the world, but it can change the people, it can change the hearts, and the people can then change the world.
And I assume, your perspective on Africa and Africans has evolved through your writing journey. But what advice would you give, emerging poets and writers in Africa who aspire to make a similar impact?
My journey as a writer has actually been deeply shaped by the stories of my mother, Hawa Maina, late Hawa Maina, a woman whose voice was actually rooted in purpose and in culture. And she taught me that storytelling is legacy, it's not just an expression. So through her, I learned that, words can actually carry the weight of generations. So I say to emerging poets and writers in Africa, your voice is valid, your truth is powerful, and your story matters. And our stories might have been interrupted, but they're not erased, and we have the power to reclaim our stories. We do have the power. So please write, and just take it as a step towards restoration, whether of self, whether of community, and whether of Africa in itself, because Africa needs all of our voices. Africa has risen, Africa is not rising, and so we must be part of that movement. Africa is a mother, Africa is beautiful, and so we must contribute through our voices, and any other thing that you have to offer. Africa needs all of us now more than ever, because the world is actually stepping up to understand and to recognize us. And so we must also then recognize ourselves. Our ancestors will live through our bodies. We shouldn't forget how to find each other. Thank you very much.
All right, then. Thank you so much, Mariam Bukar Hassan, internationally renowned poet. She's actually in transit as with speech. She was at the airport, so we do appreciate you joining us on the program. Welcome to our Africa Tech segment. Technology is changing how we tell stories, and creatives like Malik Afebua is using it to make sure African voices and identities are seen and celebrated. He is a digital artist, creative technologist, and virtual reality curator. He's also the CEO of Slick City Media, where he blends art, culture, and technology to challenge stereotypes and spark new conversations.
Hi, I'm Malik, a creative technologist and a storyteller based in Lagos, Nigeria.
This is Malik Afebua, a digital artist, filmmaker, creative technologist, and the mind behind Slick City Media, where art, culture, and tech collide to challenge stereotypes and spark new conversations. For Malik, it all started with curiosity, a deep love for tech, and a hunger to explore the future of storytelling.
I love technology, and I've always been a tech buff, a gadget freak. I love to experiment. I love to know what the next technology will be like in the next 10 years. So that's who I am. So that kind of spilled into my company as well. I love to experiment. I love to experiment on the next ways to tell stories, on the next ways to receive stories. Experimenting with VR and AR was what led me to AI.
From experimenting with virtual reality and augmented reality to exploring immersive experiences, Malik's foray into tech was never about the hype. It was about access and impact. For him, AI is not a shortcut. It's a collaborator, a tool to enhance, not replace, creativity. He was always experimenting, always building new workflows to solve old problems. So when AI tools became more accessible in late 2022 and 2023, Malik was ready.
I approach AI as a tool, and it's not a replacement. It's just an enhancement, And if I approach it as a tool, that means that every other tool that I've used in the past, the same way I approach it. So it's not something I will just go and approach and try and use that to, type the prompts, get the product, and put it out there. That's not what I do. I create things, from scratch mostly. I train a neural network mostly, or I use it to speed up my workflow mostly. And because I experiment with it a lot, I find new ways to approach it, find new pipelines on how to, solve problems.
But for Malik, this journey also came with a wake-up call. The algorithms weren't built with Africa in mind. Misrepresentation was everywhere. African identities were often reduced to cliches, poverty, or even non-existence. So he decided to do something about it.
Misrepresentation and the bias in that space is massive. It's getting better, where it was worse. So when I first of all tried to create fashion show for the elders, I was getting images that were not representing our culture, not representing us. I was getting impoverished images, and I was thinking, why was I getting impoverished images? Is it that we don't have the right data online, or is it that it's trained on the wrong data? But when I delved into research, it was a lot deeper than that.
One of Malik's most powerful works is the Elder series, where he uses artificial intelligence to reimagine African seniors styled in bold, elegant fashion, walking virtual runways with pride. He trained the AI himself because when you can't find representation, you build it.
So what is AI trained on? It's trained on all these things, stock photography and every other thing that you find online. And there is no regulation, it's just literally everything. So if our data that is out there, it's not being intentional, then it's going to be trained on data that's just out there. So if we're doing TV shows, films, everything that will not be intentional about the kinds of things we put out there, that's a problem, because in the future, that is the trainings on this AI neural network and everything will be trained on everything that we'll put out. So what would the next generation have to feed on?
The Elder series didn't just go viral. It sparked a global conversation about age, identity, and how we see beauty. From fashion shows to art galleries, the project traveled across continents, challenging ageism and inviting us all to rethink what it means to be African, as well as growing old with grace and dignity. Malik also understands the importance of ownership in this space. With every project, he ensures originality, feeding the AI with his own work and protecting it through copyright.
Most of the time you can't copyright most of these things, but that's based on how much of the data that you own in it, or how much of the inputs that you have in it. Over 60-70% you can definitely copyright it. So I make sure that whatever I create with AI, I don't let it scrape off data. I don't let it scrape up somebody else's artwork or someone else's job. I'm also creative, so I can create the process and just feed it to the AI machine and make it enhanced, or make it faster, or create more variations of what I want to do.
But beyond copyright, Malik reminds us that we cannot wait for the tech companies. It's on us to upload our truth, our beauty, and our voice. And he is already thinking ahead.
Right now, I'm currently documenting stories from elderly people that are aged 80 and above, from all the cultures, like everywhere in all parts of Nigeria, all sub-levels, all major levels, everything. And the fact of that is, when I'm done in Nigeria, I'm doing it for the entire countries in the world, Africa and the rest of the world. I'm not just documenting, I'm also filming them, and I'm going to be exhibiting them in a holographic way. So in 50 years' time, you could be speaking to your ancestors. Nobody in our lifetime ever spoke to their ancestors or heard from their ancestors. So that's currently what I'm doing. So, and that came up from the Elder series, from the AI theater now into the physical, that now we're touching lives all around the world and preserving history, culture, values, heritage forever. So yeah.
A bigger mission lies ahead for Malik, which is ensuring that African stories, languages, and identities are represented in our shared digital future. Because in a world where AI learns from everything we put online, the absence of African narratives means generations could grow up without ever seeing themselves reflected in the future. For Malik Afedbua, Technology is not just about innovation, it's about inclusion. It's about making sure that African voices are not just heard, but remembered, celebrated, and reflected in every frame of our digital world.
And that's it on the program for today and for the week. Thank you for watching. I'm Layo Olarinde. Have a lovely weekend.